Thank you for joining us today. My dad's here, and I have a question for him, and he's gonna give us his input on it.
All right.
What could be the benefits for a pastor if he understood people's design?
Like their personality, their
Yeah,
design.
yeah, the personality design. And
There's many benefits. You mean individually or just the concept of it?
it seems more like if you knew individuals, how each one, it seems like that would have more benefit than just the concept.
Yeah. So I have a good friend of mine who's a pastor, and I've really enjoyed talking with him and working with him on understanding people's design. By the way, did you know I'm so frustrated about this? I believe it may be a cult or some strain of thinking called human design. And has nothing to do with God, has nothing to do with being created in God's image.
Mhm.
And so I feel even though they've come before me in this, talking about human design, they don't have the rights to the phrase, God's the designer. And so when I
Right.
talk about human design,
Yeah,
I'm speaking of being made in God's image, not human design. Anyway, side topic.
yeah.
That was a big surprise for me. Anyways, well, communication is challenging if you have a large body of people, many different backgrounds, many different upbringings, all different walks of life. And it's a beautiful thing to learn that there are certain ways that God has designed people. And what we can see when we apply wisdom and knowledge is that people will handle it differently. So it'd be helpful if the pastor themselves knew if they preferred logic or values as
Mhm.
far as assessing situation. They
Mhm.
prefer to see is this good and bad and then see if it works, or
Right.
see if it works and then evaluate it as good or bad. If they knew themselves, then when they speak to other people, they would know how to essentially be like Paul. And when in Rome, he is the Romans, and you can modify your behavior in such a way as to reach and to flex towards the other person. I think it would really help a pastor to just know that these different designed people are out there.
Right.
So are they logic dominant or are they values dominant? And if they do know that information, then
Mhm.
the types of questions, how they reach their heart would be different. So for somebody who's logic dominant, you'd want to kind of stay more on a logical reasoning with them as to why following God makes the most sense. And if it's a values dominant person, you'd want to stay towards the evaluation of, is this a good thing to do? Is it good to follow your creator? And you kind of evaluate, and that conversation would look very different, but they both go to the same spot, the person's heart and mind, helping them become more like Christ. Also, knowing their design would help pastors just to know their frame of reference. Like some people are highly imaginative, so you can give a lot of illustrations. And if a pastor is very sensory dominant, our pastor tends to be more sensory dominant, and it's sometimes hard for imaginative people to follow straightforward sensory information and see where that takes us. It appears to be, it is what it is, straightforward. And so bringing in the imagination shows like the why behind, like the not hidden meanings, but in Proverbs it talks about understanding riddles and understanding like the meaning. So for instance, an example would be like, why was Eve made from Adam's rib, and why was Adam taken from the dirt, which is out of Genesis? And like, what are some of the meanings or implications behind that? It requires an imagination subject to God to look at all those implications as part of knowledge. And so some people focus on the imagination, other people focus on the sensory. It would be helpful. So there's the pastor that I work with, it's helpful if he knows who his congregation's general makeup is. If they're primarily imaginative or primarily sensory, then he can modify how he instructs and nurtures and feeds the flock. That's another way it can be used.
Yeah.
I think that even that's why we have multiple elders, and so why we have multiple men helping lead the church is because not one man. It's very difficult for one man in his own design to essentially help everybody, and so there's where that teamwork comes in, being interdependent with each other for God's glory.
It's a lot of shifting around in how you would talk to different people in the congregation if it's one person. But if you can have someone else who could be more logical dominant and can talk to people in a logical way, and it can take that burden off you in a sense of having to move around between values or logic.
You're
Yeah.
shepherding the whole flock.
Right.
It would. One of the things I think would come of this is in today's, as I've observed, in today's churches, there's a need for everybody to be doing in their own departments. And I think when we understand design, you might recognize that certain people in a department may also be useful in meeting somebody's needs. So what I'm thinking of is, let's take marriage counseling, for instance. A church may have a marriage counselor and whose value is dominant and is trying to help a husband and wife see the value of sticking it out and the value of working together. And they might focus a lot on the values. And let's say at the same church, there's a janitor who does a great job cleaning the church, making sure everything is spot on, who's a godly Christian, and they're logic dominant. It may be very helpful for the marriage counselor to say, why don't you talk to this
Janitor.
because they've got a real sense of logic and they have a high value of marriage. So let them speak to you about this topic and maybe this or that. And they might be able to express it in a way. The Holy Spirit may use that janitor to meet the needs of one of the two spouses who is not. They know it's like, they know that the marriage is valuable. I understand that. It just doesn't work. Well, the janitor may have the ability to express the logic of why it should be done. And it really may meet the need in a different way. And so seeing different people's design, you can coordinate or network people effectively. So that would be another example of why it would help a pastor to see his whole congregation say, oh, this person and this person would really benefit from each other. Because he could see, hopefully, the spiritual maturity of one and basically help them to disciple each other.
Yeah.
I guess that's it.
Well, thanks.
Yep.
Well, thank you for watching, and we hope this can help you.
All right. Take care.